The clock is ticking. Something bad is going to happen. Those 7 words, written by Kevin Federline, reignited one of the most haunting stories in modern pop culture. For nearly 20 years, the world has watched Britney Spears fight for control of her life. First from her father, then from the media, and now, some say, from her past itself. When Kevin's memoir excerpts surfaced, fans expected nostalgia. What they found instead was a warning from a man who claims he's terrified for the mother of his children. He writes that Britney's freedom has come at a dangerous cost, and that the signs he once saw before her breakdown are returning. The public reaction was instant: outrage, sympathy, confusion. Is this a concerned father speaking out, or an opportunist trying to profit from her pain? One thing was clear: the story of Britney Spears was far from over. And this time, the danger might not be from control, but from freedom itself. But Kevin's words didn't just come from thin air. They came from a book that has already shaken Hollywood to its core. In October 2025, the New York Times published excerpts from Kevin Federline's forthcoming memoir. What began as a reflection on fatherhood quickly turned into a storm of headlines. He recounted late-night phone calls, disturbing messages, and moments that he said left him sleepless and helpless. According to Kevin, Britney was not the same person I knew in 2004. He claimed her behavior had become erratic, and that he feared something terrible was on the horizon. Within hours, the media seized on his most explosive line. "This feels like it's racing towards something irreversible." The phrase spread like wildfire. Commentators debated whether Kevin was warning the public or simply trying to sell books. Either way, his voice had resurfaced in a conversation that many thought was finally quieting down. But it was the details behind those words that truly startled fans. Accounts of moments no parent ever wants to witness. Kevin's memoir described scenes that sent shockwaves through both the press and the fan base. He wrote about finding Britney awake at 3 a.m., standing quietly in the doorway of their son's room, a kitchen knife in her hand. He said she never spoke, just stood there watching them sleep. He alleged that she'd become paranoid, whispering that someone was trying to take her children again. He claimed he hid the knives after that night. To outsiders, these descriptions were terrifying. To others, they were infuriating. Because after everything Britney had endured under a 13-year conservatorship, people wondered, was Kevin repeating the same old story used to justify controlling her life? No proof was offered, no dates confirmed. But in a world driven by headlines, details didn't matter. The imagery did. And once again, Britney Spears was back in the center of a conversation about her mental health, a conversation she never asked to join. But Britney was not silent. Her response came swiftly, and it flipped the story on its head. Britney's team responded within a day. Her representative issued a statement to People magazine. Once again, he and others are profiting off her story. All Britney cares about are her kids and their well-being. It was a measured reply, short, calm, and protective. But behind the words was a woman exhausted by being explained by others. In her own memoir, The Woman in Me, Britney had already told her side. She spoke of a decade under constant surveillance, a life where every choice was monitored, and the pain of being called unstable for simply wanting control of her own life. She wrote, "I wasn't broken. I was tired. I was lonely, and I was done being someone else's version of me." To her supporters, Kevin's book was an attack on a woman who'd already been through enough. To others, it was a disturbing sign that maybe the freedom she'd fought for was still fragile. Either way, the public was split, and the debate only grew louder. But to understand why this moment feels so heavy, we have to go back to where it all began, to the battle that defined Britney's life. To understand the fear in Kevin's words, you have to understand the world Britney came from, a world where freedom was both her dream and her downfall. For over 13 years, Britney Spears lived under one of the most restrictive conservatorships in modern celebrity history. Every dollar she earned, every decision she made, filtered through the same man who once promised to protect her. Her father, Jamie Spears, publicly. She was smiling and performing sold-out tours, recording albums, starring in Vegas residencies that made millions. Privately, she was trapped. In court testimony later leaked to the New York Times, Britney said, "I wasn't allowed to drive, have a baby, or even buy candles for my house. I had no control over my body or my life. It wasn't just control, it was captivity disguised as care. And while the world was entertained, she was being erased. Those years shaped everything that followed. The rage, the rebellion, the wild Instagram posts, they weren't random. They were echoes of someone relearning how to exist. But when she finally broke free, the world expected healing, not realizing that freedom without safety can be its own kind of prison. When the conservatorship ended in 2021, the internet celebrated. Free Britney trended worldwide. Fans cried, strangers cheered. It was the victory they'd waited over a decade for. But victory doesn't mean peace. Britney was finally free. But free to what? No therapy, no real support system, no team that truly understood her trauma. Just millions of people watching her every move, waiting for proof that she was okay. She tried to express herself, dancing videos, cryptic captions, bursts of emotion, and each time, the internet dissected it. Some saw liberation, others saw instability. For Britney, the spotlight had always been a mirror, reflecting not who she was, but what others wanted her to be. And now, that mirror was broken. A close friend reportedly told Rolling Stone, "She's free, yes, but she's isolated. She doesn't trust anyone, not family, not the industry, not the media." Freedom, it seemed, had come at the cost of peace. And that's where Kevin's story begins, not as an enemy, but as someone who once stood beside her. And maybe still feels haunted by what he saw. Kevin Federline wasn't just Britney's ex-husband. He was a witness to both her rise and her unraveling. When they met in 2004, Britney was America's sweetheart, and Kevin was a backup dancer with big dreams. Their chemistry was undeniable, their love story fast and chaotic, the kind tabloids live for. But beneath the fairy tale, there was tension. Paparazzi chased them relentlessly. Kevin became a national punchline, labeled a gold digger and Mr. Britney Spears. He later said in an interview, "People forget. I was a dad trying to protect my family in the middle of a circus." When Britney's breakdown came in 2007, the shaved head, the umbrella incident, Kevin became the quiet one. He took custody of their sons and avoided interviews. Some said he was protecting the kids. Others said he was exploiting her downfall. In truth, it was both survival and surrender. He couldn't save her. And maybe he never stopped feeling guilty about that. So when his new memoir surfaced with dark warnings about Britney's current state, it wasn't just gossip. It was history repeating, the same panic, the same pain, now written in past tense. But if Kevin's words reopened old wounds, what happened next would expose a truth deeper than either of them could control. It only took 24 hours. Kevin's warnings, Britney's response, and the resurfaced footage from 2007. All of it collided into a single, chaotic week. News outlets recycled the same clips, the crying interviews, the ambulance lights, the old paparazzi photos of a woman who was breaking, not because she was crazy, but because the world was watching. Headlines didn't say Kevin Federline fears for Britney. They said, Britney spiraling again. It didn't matter that none of it was verified. It didn't matter that no one close to her confirmed anything. The story was simply too valuable to question, because in Hollywood, tragedy sells, and Britney Spears has always been the media's most profitable tragedy. An insider told Variety, "Every outlet wants a piece of her story, but no one asks if she wants to tell it." Even fans started fighting among themselves, half defending her, half convinced she needed intervention. In the noise, one truth echoed louder than ever. Britney Spears is still not free. Not from headlines, not from narratives, and not from the ghosts of her own fame. But beneath the chaos, there's something even more powerful, a truth Britney herself has been quietly trying to show us. Look beyond the noise and you'll see something raw. In her Instagram posts, the spinning, the smiles, the small fragments of her life, there's a kind of rebellion the public still doesn't understand. She's not trying to convince anyone she's fine. She's showing the world that fine is no longer the goal. Britney's entire story, the rise, the fall, the cage, and the escape, isn't about perfection. It's about survival. About a woman who lost everything that made her human, and somehow found the strength to rebuild it from the pieces. For all his words, Kevin can only tell his version. And maybe that's the truth we keep missing. Maybe Britney doesn't owe us normalcy. Maybe she's teaching us that healing isn't a comeback. It's a choice. Because for all the chaos, all the pain, and all the years she spent being defined by others, Britney Spears is still here. And she's still fighting. Not for fame, not for